Thank you. We're going to spend a little bit of time looking at the overall contribution, economic contribution of the forestry sector. We'll spend time with 4 different key commodities and a little bit of outlook for 2014. I want to thank some of our contributing authors and those that provided us data with the Kentucky Division of Forestry for this, and our partners as well. So let's talk about the total economic impact of the forestry sector, estimated at $7.9 billion this year in 2013, with a total contribution of 12.8. And we have direct employment of 27,000 and total employment of near 60,000, with about $2 billion in earned income. So this number is up. Our estimates for last year, 2012, were 6.3, and we missed it by about 15%. It came in better than that. The industry performed better than we thought. So we're on an uptrend, and that's good. Now, this number right here is not to be confused with cash receipts, of course. This is total forestry sector impact. It would be roughly comparable to in thinking in terms of ag, maybe a quarter, a third of the total ag economic input in the state. But still important and is moving upwards. If you look at different sectors that are involved, starting with residue, that's like bark mulch, for example, that you might think of that you purchase from landscaping situations. That's coming out of forestry. Logging, primary milling, that's sawmilling, pulp and paper. We have 2 pulp and paper facilities that make paper here in Kentucky. Secondary industries are cabinet manufacturers, flooring, that kind of thing, and paper converters are those part of the industry that makes something out of paper, whether it's cups or envelopes, stationery, packaging, that kind of thing. Logging is a relatively small sector, but it's critical. It's been very volatile this year. It's been up and down the last several years, very stressed. The reason that sector is important, if you pull that sector out, a significant portion of that rest of that pie collapses. So the logging sector has been up, but it's one that we are still concerned with, and I'll speak to that here in a few minutes. So the sectors were up overall, with the exception of paper converters. Paper converters lost about 1%. The national paper usage and our paper consumption in the U.S. is declining at about 3 to 4%. Our paper converters are doing better than that, okay, which is good. So their loss was less than we predicted, and that helped buoy our numbers up a little bit. And we'll talk about outlooks for 2014 here in a few minutes, and we'll talk specifically about that sector. But everybody else was up. We still have good distribution of facilities, forest industry facilities. All these dots on there are 793 of them, located in 109 counties, and that's comparable to last year. So the nice thing about this is it shows that you have good distribution of that 7.9 and 12.8 billion across the state. Very important from an economic development, rural economic development standpoint. The shaded counties there represent logging. We've got about 1,800 firms total. And the darker shaded counties represent those with more Kentucky Master Loggers in them. So we still have a good cadre of loggers out there that cut and haul saw logs and pulpwood off our woodlands to the industry. If you look at overall saw log production, so Kentucky is known for its hardwood saw log production, and you can see our numbers. 1999 was the recent high of 1.1 billion board foot sawn in Kentucky. We were second to Pennsylvania in that year. Of course, kind of things went off the deep end in 2009, and we've been recovering since that point in time. Now, even though we're off certainly our recent high, that 1.1, we're still the leading producer of hardwood saw logs in the South, and we're still second in the U.S. So very significant sector, and this is responding to the overall economic strength of the U.S. economy and housing starts, which was mentioned a minute ago. All in all, we're estimated to be up about 6% in this year, which is fairly significant. And it's hard to estimate this year. The wet weather conditions affected logging like it did a lot of other agriculture. Most loggers between January and mid-July didn't work a full week during that period of time. So that's a very volatile thing this year to try to figure, but we believe and we feel confident we're going to be up in production, responding slowly as the U.S. economy responds. If you look at pricing now, so this is commodity pricing for quality grade 1, we call grade 1 saw logs. These are prices over here in the right-hand column of in dollars per thousand board foot. So you can see what happened in 2012, where everything was flat or down price-wise. You can see what's happened in 2013. So that's really good. up over a total of 11%. And what's more important here, yellow poplar responded very strongly. Red oak that's been going down or flat has started to come up. And the reason I mention those two things is because we've got a lot of them. The poplar is responding to increased housing starts, and poplar used for trim work, you use for interior parts of cabinetry, all of that kind of thing, and we're responding. And the commodity, so the demand is there, and the price is up as well. So that looks really, really good for this year. And we'll talk a little bit about projections for 2014 here in a minute. A couple other commodities. Pulpwood. Pulpwood is most important for our farm woodland owners and our woodland owners west of Beaver Dam, Central City area, where we have very strong markets. And you see there the upward trending we have both in pricing per ton for mixed hardwoods and mixed pine. There are some issues that can occur that are seasonal issues associated with pulpwood pricing and supply demand relative to weather. Things have been pretty stable, and that should continue. Tie logs are important. So tie logs are the logs that are being made into cross tie for railroads, and that market has been on an upward swing. Prices have been steadily increasing. They've been stable throughout last year, a little bit of increase, and stable this year. And tie logs are also important because every woodlands has them. Every woodland owner here in the state has in their woods, loggers can derive tie logs and sell them. So it's a very important commodity for us. We do export them, and so those prices have been going up. The highest price we've had for individual species have been hickory, $371 this last year. So that's been a very good mover and very good price associated with it. Stave logs. Stave logs are logs that are sawn into the vertical pieces that go into barrels. Barrels and cooperage are number one export from Kentucky. Obviously we use a lot of them for a lot of different reasons. Bourbon, whiskey, and different distillates, as well as wine, that was mentioned earlier. We had good pricing and upward pricing. You can see in 2012 we capped out at $875 a thousand for white oak stave logs, and that's been stable throughout 2013. That's good, and we'll talk about the potential for that in 2014 as well. Housing starts was mentioned a few minutes ago. Of course, housing starts is an indicator of overall strength of the U.S. economy. It's also important from a wood standpoint. A lot of wood stuff goes into housing, so it has that dual function for us. And so housing's gone up recently. Our industry has responded to that. That's a good thing. Projections are for it to be fairly stable, not going down. We'd like to see it increase. Obviously, that has benefit for us. So as housing starts to go, it will affect our pricing and our supply and demand functions in the state for what we produce. So to kind of wrap up, overall outlook. Now, pulp and paper production. We have two pulp and paper facilities in Kentucky. They produce white paper. They do it with hardwood, oak type pulpwood, and that kind of thing. And even though overall paper consumption in the U.S. is supposed to be off 3 to 4% a year is what's estimated, our particular producers are going to be stable, and there are several reasons for that. But the sectors that they supply to are staying fairly stable. That's a good thing. So the pulp and paper, the pulpwood demand will be there. Paper converters again will be down. We're using less stationery, for example, less envelopes. Packaging staying good. McDonald fry containers staying good. So all of that staying in place, but we will be losing some on the paper converters. We lost about 1% last year. We're liable to lose again 1 or 2% upcoming. Sawmilling, primary milling, making lumber and that kind of thing, railroad tie, all that, very good. Secondary industry will be on an upswing as well. So those two things are going to drive our saw log production and demand for saw logs and saw log pricing in the state. So all of that looks good for 2014. So the demand should be stable or increasing, we believe. Opportunities for woodland owners are good, especially in the first 2 quarters. That wet weather this year has depleted log supply. So we're going to roll in, depending on how this winter looks, we're going to roll into 2014. Log will be a seller's market in a lot of places. So it'll put the squeeze from the sawmilling standpoint, trying to get supplies in, but that's good from the standpoint of pricing and how that can help the logging sector and landowners as well. Red oak and yellow poplar saw logs, we think they'll be stable or increasing, both the price and demand, and that's good. And tie and stave logs should remain stable. Now, the stave logs long term looks good. Projections are 10 to 15% increase in stave usage and cooperage production between now and 2025. So that market we can continue and expect to go up. We do have things that are influencing things right now. The logging sector is under a lot of stress, and it has been for several years. We're seeing an increase in delivered log prices now, and a little bit in pulpwood and those kind of things. Tie log, that's good, because those prices for delivered goods that loggers bring in has not kept up with the price of tires and belts and parts. And the loggers are in a real fiscal squeeze and have been for a while. It's a very volatile and sensitive area. We'll say this, with the lagging of the coal industry, a lot of the heavy equipment operators and entrepreneurs in Eastern Kentucky especially are moving back into logging. There are a number of individuals that slide back and forth between logging and mining depending upon the strength of those industries, and everybody understands what stress the coal industry is in. And we've seen an uptick in the number of those getting into the logging game here in the last 6 months in that region of the state. So we're going to watch that pretty closely. We have a closure of International Paper's facility in Alabama. That particular facility is a pulp and paper facility, makes hardwood paper just like our mills do. That particular mill is 4 times larger than our mills here in Kentucky. So that's going to leave a dent in the paper supply, which will be good because that will be spread around, and our industries will see increased orders from that. That will help stabilize them. So that mill closure there, while will have, even though it's one mill, will have positive implications for us. The weather is going to be a continued factor. We're going to see carryover, as I mentioned a minute ago, from the wet weather we had in 2013. Log supplies are low in some places. This creates a seller's market, of course, and creates a pull and demand. The weather this winter will play a big part into how good that seller's market stays and how long it stays into 2013. And obviously housing starts, as I mentioned earlier, is something that's going to influence things. The one thing that's not up here that is coming into play, and we'll probably speak more to it next year, is biomass issues. Pellet production and energy production from wood residues and residues in the logging woods is something we're probably going to talk about, and that may influence the demand and pricing for some forestry commodities in certain parts of Kentucky. So with that, Lee, I'll turn it over.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks to everyone.